different ages and stages in their learning, all with a common goal of getting ServSafe certified. I'd like to welcome you to this panel discussion with three very incredible educators here. Here we have Wayne Worthy from Redland Middle School, a middle school teacher who's been teaching for 25 years in culinary arts. Joe Kalfas, who's at the East Valley Institute of Technology here in Mesa, Arizona, who's been teaching for 20 years. And Joey Buddendorf, sorry.
That's okay. It's okay, Di.
Yeah, New England Culinary Institute from Montpelier, Vermont, and she's been teaching for 21 years, and also as part of Community Kitchen Academy. So with this discussion, we're going to be talking about the essential topic of how do you get students ServSafe Manager certified with relative ease. Well, it's never easy, but we try to do things to make our lives easier and the students' lives easier. So to kick off the session, we're going to have Wayne talk about what he does with his students.
Okay. Well, I'm a middle school teacher, and this is a program that we've incorporated about 7 years ago, started offering the ServSafe curriculum.
Wow.
I only offer it to the 8th graders as part of a magnet program between agriculture and culinary arts. And the students absolutely must pass the test. If they don't, our school gets hurt, our school grade gets hurt. So it's all about getting the kids to pass. So
Wayne,
with that being said, there's a few things we do to try to make that happen.
Yeah, Wayne, and when I first found out that you did ServSafe at the middle school level, I was floored because realistically, I've never heard of such a thing. I mean, this is like high school senior level stuff that you consider. So how do you do it, Wayne? How do you get these 8th graders ServSafe for Manager certified?
Okay, well, it is a draw. It does draw them to our school and to the magnet program. The state of Florida does have a labor law that does allow a child at the age of 14 to work. So if they're going to leave 8th grade as a 14-year-old and they're a rising 9th grader, they can work in the summertime. They can work during the breaks. They can work weekends during the school year even. And Miami is kind of one of the culinary capitals in the country. So it's an opportunity here.
Wonderful. Let's get into what you do to get them ready for the certification.
Okay. Well, as we all know, the book has about 10 chapters. Most of the recent editions have 10 chapters. Every chapter in the book, I try to give the students some type of project that they can take ownership of, where they have a little bit of self-direction on where they want to go. So here's an example of chapter 2. They create a chart of the big 6, something that can be laminated, and they can take it in the car with them. When they're waiting at the doctor office or for their parents, they've got a laminated card they can study from.
Yeah.
This is another project from temperatures. This would be coming from chapters 5 and 6. And again, they could laminate the backside of their big 6 chart. So each student, goes through the book and reads the material where there's a temperature involved, and then they create a chart that can help them study and retain the material. Another project might deal with vocabulary. There's a lot of vocabulary words in that curriculum that's can be complicated for the middle school students. So there's no shortage of online free programs on the internet that will allow students to create a crossword puzzle. So they like to create these puzzles and then they share them. Everybody creates a different puzzle and then they share them with each other and they score them. They really enjoy that. And of course, PowerPoints. This comes from chapter 4, the thermometers. There's a lot of different thermometers and gadgets in chapter 4. So one activity is to create a PowerPoint, share it with the class.
And these are things that the students do themselves to create ownership, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're self-directed and, the final product is their project, but they truly enjoy sharing them with the other students.
Awesome. So once this is all said and done, then let's get into your evaluation of them.
Okay. So we definitely enjoy using the KP Compass program. We use it every year. And I found that this particular program is like an added bonus to having the textbook, because there's a lot of things that the students can do in this program when I'm not physically present with them right there at that moment. They can read this material, they can take these assessments. And as you look at this chart, you'll notice there's a lot of blue boxes. Those are assessments. Those are chapter assessments or review assessments. The final 6, for example, are reviews for the entire book. And I can kind of track their progress. what I like about these assessments, I can also see the missed question. So one of my great study strategies is when we go back and look at reviewing, we'll go and find a test where the student scored low. We'll look at all the incorrect answers, we'll poll them, and then we'll specifically study those answers, requiring the students to search the textbook, find the page reference, etc. When you see the yellows, that means the student is lacking in the reading comprehension. There's something they're missing. So when they're reading this material inside the KP program, they're getting questions incorrect. And when you see green, that means I've got them correct. So prior to selecting an exam group, I have to state how many are going to test and when. I'll look at this KP program. This is my first tool. And I can pull from here. Maybe I'm looking at this chart right here. I could probably pull 13 kids just looking at this data right here that have a chance to pass the test.
And this is important because you don't want the students to go and fail it, right?
Especially no, like I said before,
gray boxes.
And I was not exaggerating. They absolutely must pass. The principal tells me right to my face, he says, listen, you pick the kids, let's look over the data, but every kid must pass this test. And there's a lot riding on, a lot at stake.
That's great, So yeah, the data-driven decision. But what you're saying here is this is during the 2020 school year. So this is a pandemic year. So you have a few kids who kind of fell away, right?
Yes, thanks for pointing that out. Some of those gray boxes, we're in a pandemic year. Those students just kind of disappeared. They're not present. A lot of them, we don't know where they're at. Some of them have left the country. Some of them log on from places like Cuba and Mexico, but very infrequently. So it's unfortunate, it's kind of embarrassing, but it's the reality that we all face.
Okay, so now that you weeded them out and selected your group, let's look at how you did this year.
Yes, so we can't just look at only that data. It also, I found this test is very heavily correlated to reading level, reading ability. Yeah. So if you look at column B, that pretty much is the score on the prior slide of their performance on those assessments and comprehension. The column C is, did the student actually complete the program? Did they do all the reading activities? Did they take all the assessments? Did they participate? That's just the value I throw in there, a snapshot. And then we look at their reading scores from the prior state test, which is a real significant indicator. The only problem was because we didn't test last year in COVID, we're 2 years old on our data, but a level 5 is a maximum reading score. And if you look, the students in column D that had a level 5 or a level 4 on their state assessment 2 years ago passed the test on the first try, which is column F. And we usually see that if they can read well and they're completing those KP Compass programs, they're going to pass the exam. I have no questions about a 4 or 5. It's when you get to level 2s and the 3s. You'll see some there, for example, lines 9 and 10. Line 9 did not pass on the first try. Level 2 reader passed on the second try with an 80. However, level 2 reader on line 10 did pass on the first try with a 78. So,
right.
That reading score at that age level is very important.
Yeah, 8th graders, you don't expect that level of comprehension, but somehow you did it. Let's talk about this outlier here, number 11.
Yeah, outlier number 11 is an ESOL student, came from Venezuela, spoke no English 2 years ago. So yeah, her reading score says level 1, but she's not. She's since graduated out of ESOL. If she was to take a state assessment now, she'd probably be a level 4, I would guess. So I tested her. I took a risk. I tested her. You can see her KP scores are pretty good. And she passed on the first try. And that was one of our success stories in our entire school this whole year.
That's wonderful. Applause for that. No English to be able to pass ServSafe Managers. That's quite an accomplishment. Yeah. All right. Well, that's great, Wayne. Thanks for sharing your techniques and your data-driven decisions. So, we're in a data-driven world. So the more data points you have to make the right decisions, the best it is for you, your students, and not to mention money. All right, so let's move on to Joe. He's in a different environment here. Thank you, Joe. You're up.
Well, thank you, Nye, and everybody else. It's nice to be a part of this. Here at the East Valley Institute of Technology, we're a career and technical education district, a CTED. And so we're actually fed by 11 school districts here in the East Valley of metropolitan Phoenix. We have almost 60 high schools that feed us. And if you have any clue of the geo and socioeconomic indicators of Phoenix, we go as far as the Northeast Valley, which would be Cave Creek, Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, which tends to be very affluent mostly. And then we go as far south and southeast as Santan Valley, right up against the Gila River Indian community. So we have each end of the spectrum as far as socioeconomic, as well as everything in the middle. And then of course, all the students are bussed in for a half a day. Our program, we usually have between our 3 tracks, we have a commercial baking, a culinary, and a hospitality management track for the students. All have dual enrollment and national certification with ACF. So we try to not test the students until the end of the first year for ServSafe. And we are with special populations. We obviously limit the accommodation and that sort of thing. But what probably makes us most successful, and then now if you want to go to the next slide, we talk about some of the best practices that we've either kind of figured out the hard way or stolen from somebody else. As we all know, as educators, that's what we do. But one thing that we notice with a lot of teachers, especially statewide when we get together, is they were caught in the loop of, well, ServSafe is sanitation. I always teach sanitation the first unit, so we're going to make them pass it before we get into cooking. What we found is that's a really difficult strategy, primarily because the students, this isn't just sanitation, this is managing sanitation, and there's a whole level of biology that goes with it.
Right.
And so we do have, we have about 40 programs that are housed on our campus, and we're lucky to have some biology and medical teachers as well. So a lot of times we can create cross-curricular collaboration. We can have those program specific or content specialists actually come in, we switch classes for the day, or they come in and help present in the same vein that they would do with their classes, especially when we're talking about the big 6 or some of the biological microorganisms. We also, because we test towards the end of the year, we tend to chunk it out a lot more. And so we really focus in on presenting something, and very similar to what Wayne demonstrated, which I've got some questions for you later on, because it was great to see. But, when we look at enrichments and we look at self-directed projects, that definitely, you can afford yourself, if the ServSafe idea becomes, instead of a unit, it's almost like a year-long journey parallel to everything else that they're using. And then we have a school-based enterprise, we have a student-run restaurant, we have a retail bakery, and then a banquet facility. So as the students are learning the concepts, they're actually practicing them. And for our hospitality management students especially, KP Learning is actually, the way we've integrated it with them is it becomes a companion tool. So it's, we use it similar to how Wayne described, in that we look at their performance before we let them test. And we use that as kind of a predictor of how they'll do. And I won't let anyone move on to the test, as it were, until we get like a minimum 85% on 2 of the practice tests, as an example. But with what, it's basically right in line with Wayne, we want to see their performance on the KP platform first, before we actually give them what we call the live test. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Joe, for that. And talk about diversity. You've definitely got a big cross section of people from all over the city, which is huge. Yeah. Arizona is like the 5th largest city. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the nation. So,
yeah.
So we definitely got a lot of people. All right, and let's move on to Joey. You have a very special circumstance with your students.
Yeah. So I'm gonna first give you kudos, Nye, for covering the entire demographic of student that uses KP between the 3 of us, because we have middle school, which I am just totally, Wayne, that's amazing. 8th graders, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, that's amazing. And Joe, your demographic is challenging. Mine is anybody over the age of 18 up to whatever age it may be. I actually have taught ServSafe and taken ServSafe in multiple facets throughout my career. We certified students at New England Culinary Institute for years, as all of you are aware, I'm sure. I was an instructor there for about 17 years or so, longer. But then I worked in admissions and recruitment. So Joe, I totally understand your program and being a regional technical center and the challenges that you have. And I visited many of them and have done Skills USA judging and have done all of those ProStart things and, you know, understand that demographic. Mine in particular is adults with challenges that could range from anything from being, now we're going to include COVID with that, being home isolated for a year and a half, or really it starts with maybe being jailed for 19 years for a misdemeanor crime or a felony crime that's nonviolent. It may be somebody with mental health issues that have been treated well and they are now ready to become workforce eligible. I have a very close collaboration and partnership between Vermont Food Bank and the Capstone Community Action Agency, which is a nonprofit organization that helps with housing, weatherization, you know, Head Start programs, and we have a food shelf. So the Vermont Food Bank and New England Culinary Institute about 10 years ago collaborated and created this program that's a hands-on teaching program that resources the food from the food bank that's donated to teach students basic culinary skills and give them workforce eligibility. So they don't have to leave my program and become chefs or use this as that. They can leave my program and continue their educations. They can leave my program and, you know, go be working in a dentist's office. But they may have addiction problems. They may have been in abusive marriages. They may have been in DCF custody their entire life and not able to make critical thinking decisions. And so it's quite amazing how my job now is really focused on social services, social enterprise, and teaching students to live well, again, improving quality of life through a kitchen setting. So my students are quite different as far as technology goes, as far as the ability to have the technology to create a PowerPoint, or being in rural Vermont also, it can be a challenge, but we're working on getting the internet everywhere up here. What I want to say is, out of my classes, since I started 2 years ago at Community Kitchen Academy, the KP tool has been important to me. I wish I had had it for my first group because I had the most students in that group because that was the one before COVID. But now we have adjusted our curriculum to 5 sessions per year, 7-week sessions, and 5 students per session instead of 12 students, 3 sessions per year. So it's a small program. It's funded through Vermont Student Assistance Corporation. We have many community partners, such as Central Vermont Adult Basic Education and things like that. KP is really important to me in the process with adults who have not been in school for quite some time. And I actually have a person with Down syndrome that's one of my students for the first time ever, a challenge. He just took a KP practice exam yesterday and got a 95%. So I'm so excited because he really uses, I think, now all 3 of the formats you have there, the audio, the visual, and, you know, the hearing at the same time for somebody with his kind of disability. And he's high functioning, and he works in a cafe a couple of days a week and went through my class as a solo with his assistant for 4 weeks. I customized the program for him, and now he's in class 2 days a week with the other students. So I want to say that it really is a broad range for me. I start with the ServSafe actual food handlers book, and it's a very easy workbook, work from the book kind of way to introduce to students the information. And it's a lot of pictures and it's simple questions. And as you go through to the 5th chapter at the end, it becomes harder. So I find that that's a really easy way to just say, hey, this is what we're going to be working on. Go home and take the book with you and do the first 2 rounds and do the questions, and let's review those tomorrow. And that's what we do to get them back in. And then I take the KP and put that in between that study and the book study. And so once they start in KP now, which, you know, can take my students a few days to actually, they'll log in, then they won't go, and then they do this, and then they do that, depending on what their life is doing. But then once they get going and they really utilize the KP curriculum, they do really well. It really depends on my student individually, how they utilize that program. And they're adults, right? So it's harder for me to get them to sit, study, do it. And like you, Wayne, my students have to pass this exam eventually. So they can take it twice with me. They can take it once and then one more time within the 6-week frame, you know, or deadline of doing that. And they have to complete at least this exam and pass it within 6 months of completing their program with me. We only pay for it twice for them, and then they have to pay for it again, but they can come back and take it with me anytime. I've actually brought in a veteran NECI instructor to proctor the exam for me in person as well, because I'm the one who teaches their curriculum. I found better success with a different proctor, just because they can ask him questions, you know, if they needed to. And it's a different face in the room, and it makes them feel, he's very academic, different than I am in that way. So he makes it feel like an exam situation, but not stressful. So it works.
Thanks, Joey.
Yeah.
You definitely have a great challenge group, because, you know, you're working with adults, you know, so they have to have their own self-initiative to really want to do it. But you've done a wonderful thing to get them, to encourage them through the process and get them certified, which is a challenge, especially for
definitely.
So thank you three for this panel discussion. That concludes our discussion. But now with a presentation with each of you, but we're going to continue on, and each of you brought up different things that each other talked about. So let's go ahead and continue this talk, and talk about what you learned from Wayne, from Joey, from Joe. And just like let's just have a fireside chat. So
cool.
Well, Joe, you're muted currently. God love Zoom.
There you go. All right, now you can hear me. Yeah. Wayne, I have a question. You brought up some really impressive data, and I'm probably going to be hitting you up pretty good once we hang up from this call. But so I just want to clarify, you do test them multiple times or twice, I would imagine. They don't pass the first time?
Yes. We test them the first time around the 3rd week of March, and then we go on spring break after having results in hand, because we always do computer-based tests.
Mm-hmm. And
then the second test would be like the 2nd week of April. And we do that because if for some reason we need that 3rd test date, we have to, as you know, you got to wait 60 days, ServSafe requirement. So that puts us around June 10th, the last day of school. And there was 1 year we had to test one student on the very last day of school to get her through. So we pay for the test only once at the district level. The 2nd and 3rd time, the school site has to pay for the test.
Okay.
So well, we'll give them up to 3.
Well, that was my next question, was the funding. And then, not to monopolize, but my last question, because I love how you are doing the self-directed kind of jigsawing of the students creating their own content and then presenting it. Do they have access to technology? Is that provided by the school, or is there like a computer lab, or how does that work?
Yes, so a couple of things. So in a non-COVID year, I personally do have a lab. My agri-science lab's got 14 desktop computers, and then I have a laptop cart with 14. So they have the technology. Now, starting March of last year and this whole school year, of course, because of the pandemic, every student in Miami-Dade schools was given a laptop.
Okay.
They were given like a $600 laptop with the whole Microsoft Office 365 program. So yes, every student had access as long as they had internet.
Okay.
That's awesome.
No, I mean, it's really cool to see, and it gives hope, because I know junior high kids, probably not as well as you, but I know them, and if you can get them at that success rate, there's definitely room for us to improve.
Well, but the way I look at it, your kids have a lot going on. You know, we know Joey's do, and even high school kids. You know, they have boyfriends, girlfriends, they have jobs. They have AP classes, college classes, dual enrollment. You know, I don't really have to compete with anything. You know, they're excited to get a license and know that they can get a job at Publix.
No, but I want to say that too. Like Joe is, I'll ditto what Joe's saying. I mean, to start that at the age you're doing, it's discipline, it's responsibility, it's all those great things that we have as mentors and teachers for years try to instill, right, Joe? And people that are 15, 16, 17, 18, 19,
well, and you're getting
35 right now, you know, they've never learned it. And honestly, we need to start somewhere. And I don't care if it's one student at a time. That's fantastic. Thank you, Wayne.
Yeah, so my last question, Wayne, and then I promise
on that really quick is, so what you're saying is we need to start up in the junior high level, but I'd be curious to see like how the students do in the schools that you feed to, the high schools, when they go for arts, and how their performance is, because that's just basically sets a lifelong path of success, right?
Yeah, well, what's been happening is if they feed into a high school that offers the program or the exam, you know, it's a 5-year exam. So the students are telling me that the teachers are giving them additional duties. They're moving them up levels. They're giving them like they're making them like micromanagers in the kitchen, training the others. So I don't know of anyone personally that has retaken it in high school. None of mine have told me that they took it in high school again.
Well, they wouldn't need it till, if they're 12 years old, it wouldn't be till 17, 18. So if it was, it would be literally right when they graduate. But when you're teaching when you're doing these units, Wayne, is it dedicated, or are you doing other topics in parallel to it? So
no, it's complementary. I've got a food lab, and there's a lot going on in there. You know, the teacher faculty luncheons, we do a lot of recruitment where we invite elementary families and students over, so they're always cooking. And then starting about February, when we get into the winter season in Miami, there's a lot of competition, so they're always preparing for, like, I would say February till the end of the year, there's some competition on the docket where they have to actually cook something and go serve it. And like the fair, the Miami-Dade County Fair and Expo, they do teams of 4 cooking in front of live audiences. So this is complementary, and that only helps because they see the benefit. You know, when they're going to take 500 ceviches and serve them, you know, 8 hours later at an event in downtown Miami, and they have to start cooking the shrimp and the tomato sauce the Saturday before. You know, all those things that we teach are coming all together, and they see it. You know, let me tell you, it's easy to cool soup down to 41 in a few hours, but shrimp, without ruining it, turning them one by one onto that metal pan over the ice. I mean, they see it.
Yeah, no pressure.
And it's contextual, you know, so they actually, even they can reflect on that prior experience and visualize it when they're in the testing situation or in the learning situation. Just like you said, it's like, okay, guys, remember when we did the shrimp for the ceviche? Remember how, you know, difficult it was, or how important it was, because that essentially is a ready-to-eat food from the get-go. It's not going to get cooked again. So,
we could get it to 55 degrees, no problem, but going from 55 to 41 was not easy.
Right, in that time. So it really gives them, you know, and that's one of the things that we've benefited from as well. You know, we'll pull a 40-gallon batch of stock, and just based on our conversation, the kids make it, you know, it's second nature for us, but, you know, they'll break it down into the, you know, 5-gallon buckets, they'll ice it down, we have somebody that's designated to stir, and they will check that temp after that first hour, and it's almost a point of pride if they can get it to the mark that they want. So I mean, we all experience it. It doesn't matter if it's 12-year-old or a 16-year-old, so it's pretty cool.
My kitchen's the same way. My kitchen's very hands-on in that fact that we're producing food constantly. We actually still feed people in need. We fed homeless people for a year.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, you know, we fed the homeless housed in hotels in central Vermont for a year through Capstone. You know, we were called to action during a crisis, of course. And then we did a contract with the state for 4 months while I was teaching my students online and doing shorter sessions during COVID to get them graduated. But we do about 150 meals a week on top of, that are special meals on top of what we produce for the shelf. So I probably use 13,000 pounds of food in a session. depending on what's going on. But they're constantly refurbishing food too. So they see the difference between food that's gone bad, food that hasn't. They use their sandy buckets. They have the right color cutting boards. They're matching that. And they love it when they say, chef, you know, the adults even, chef, look at me. I remembered my ServSafe. And they point it out to me, you know, because they're adults, right, that have been through trauma. So they want to say, look at me when they do something good. And I always say, oh, that's awesome. See, you're connecting the dots. And when they can physically do it, hear it, see it, witness it, this is where KP comes in with the hearing and the audio and the interaction of the video game for these adults and people with challenges really helps. It's amazing. So yeah, I think we all have, with those different demographics, reasons for using KP and ServSafe like that, for sure.
I'm curious, Joe, how many of yours actually go on and try to work as soon as they get that exam in their hand? Is it a major goal for most of them? Like, oh, wow, I can now go get a job.
Well, it all kind of works together. Absolutely. You know, we have students, and to more your point, you know, we have students that come in with it sometimes because they've already got a job or they got it when they were younger. But depending on where they are in the food chain of the job that they're at, it's not really required. You know, Maricopa County, which encompasses kind of Metro Phoenix, they changed a few years ago their whole food handler certification management, and they basically put it on the onus of the operators. And so they basically we use, everyone kind of uses it, but what I tell the students when they get it and they go interview for a job, you know, it's worth 50 cents an hour, $1 an hour more, and you can justify that, you know, when you go in. And our advisory council and our community partners, they love it because they know even if the kid isn't going to be in a supervisory role, especially with the Native American casinos that we have that are always hiring, it's just one less person you'd have to worry about, you know, when it comes to that. So by the time, if the students do it right, by the time they leave our program, they've got their ServSafe, they got their ACF certification, and then they have their certificate of completion from Scottsdale Community College through dual enrollment. And they would have all of that basically in the 2 years and then they would graduate high school. So
wow.
Yeah, we're, and that's a perfect world. And, but the students generally are pretty motivated because it's about money, you know. If they can earn $15, $16 versus 13 or 14 just by proving that they can pass this test, a lot of times that motivates them pretty well.
Great.
I want to say something really quickly about the high school students that come in, Joe, to you that have their certification already, just as a kind of a thing. We used to do that with NECI, right? So in a post-secondary education format, we would take students from technical centers, obviously, that were ServSafe certified prior. We would, like you said, Wayne, give them other tasks or do something to do or, you know, have something cool to do for them. But we actually decided that training them through the class was the best thing because ServSafe does update itself quite often. And sometimes we wouldn't make them take the exam again, but they would sit through the class and learn the new information in order to be as up to date as possible when they went to study for that again. That was just something I wanted to suggest.
Well, and that's a good balancing act because especially with human behavior, you know, some of these kids think I don't need to pay attention and, you know, I already got it and that sort of thing. So we do try to balance a little bit of both. I mean, we all have those students that kind of rise above, whether they have the certification or not. But when you have somebody that does have that certificate and it's one thing to have it, but it's another to practice it. And, you know, and when we have those, we kind of put some more onus on them as far as being almost our sanitation manager. You know, they'll be the one that goes and checks the temps on the dish machines or maybe the titration on the 3-comp sinks or something. You give them a responsibility that in the real world we don't have the luxury of having, but in a teaching environment we can literally designate somebody every 30 minutes to change out the sinks or to delegate that. So just finding even just small snippets of authority or, you know, advanced
Sous
responsibility.
chef, right, that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and cleaning lists and all those checklists.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff. I had to rewrite my program for COVID safety rules too. And I want to say that I am so grateful to be a certified chef from ServSafe when COVID hit.
Absolutely.
Right? Didn't you guys feel that way? Like, I was like, whoa, like, I'm so glad I have this certificate, you know?
Well, I felt like we were probably more well equipped than virtually any other program on our campus to handle COVID, because really the only major, we only did 3 things different. We brought in a different chemical to make sure it was COVID lethal. We changed our social distancing. Our school invested in a lot of plexiglass partitions, and then
the
purchased,
things on the floors,
you know, a lot more tables. And then the personal protective, the face mask. Other than that, we kind of walked through almost in a HACCP format the reality of COVID and what we were doing. And because COVID's no different than norovirus or a Hep A or anything, as far as killing it and protecting it with regards to food service. That's why it was one of the lowest transmission rates is through food and beverage. So we were already equipped, right? We already know what we're doing. And I can't tell you, especially, and, you know, Nye, with one of the really benefits of KP, which you and I have talked about in the past, is it's real-time updated. You guys can pretty much go in and update it almost, you know, real time. And so COVID can become a relevant piece of it. We were using it in our discussions because it was, again, with students, you're trying to connect to them some way and trying to have them visualize it. And COVID kind of gave us this in now with a microorganism that we could all relate to. And, you know, KP is an example of they're pretty agile because they can just go in. I think it's Jeff that'll go in there and update it or do something. And then it's done. You don't have to wait for the next publication of the book. You don't have to do anything else. So I think that's a really valuable piece as well.
I think it felt like, for me, in my experience, because I'm working with many adults of many different facets and coworkers in a community action agency, when the pandemic hit, I was the calmest person in the circle of it. I just put my head down straight forward and felt calm and confident from the education. Sorry, little dog. From the education that, you know, really, really helped me stay focused and do it. Sorry, hang on, I'm muting.
Yeah, my dog was barking just a minute ago too. Maybe that triggered it. No, yeah, that's really cool. You know, we were prepared. I mean, other than, you know, maybe somebody in the medical programs.
Right.
Yeah, no, in my particular case, I'm actually not face-to-face with students this year at all. Even the ones that are in the building are just really on a computer. There's no interaction. There's no cooking allowed or trips. It's just the way we are in Miami-Dade yet. We were one of the hardest hit areas in Florida. So we started late. But I'm getting from the kids all the neat stuff that's happening in their houses. And they're applying this. And they're telling me that their parents are being driven crazy by the students telling them all the things they need to start doing in their kitchen because they're finally cooking in the kitchen again. Right. As a big family, right? So that's interesting to hear, you know, that there's some transfer there into the family.
It's wonderful. I mean, I think it really does boost confidence when they understand or pass a test on KP. They pass that little work thing. They come into class the next day, even the adults, you know, and say, 45-year-olds, Chef, I did it. I made it through that KP thing. And it makes them feel good, you know, just to get that good grade on that little section. It's awesome.
Yeah, learning good, positive.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask Joey what kind of effect that has on your students when they're serving the homeless. You mentioned some of them are high functioning, so they must understand the significance of that. It must make them feel really good.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy is like it could be 5 students now, and 3 of them were homeless at one point. Wow. One of my students said to me, "This is amazing. This is going to blow your mind." One of my students is a TBI survivor, so he's a traumatic brain injury survivor. And he's wonderful, and there's delay, and he's, you know, he's awesome. But he asked me the other day, he said, "Chef, my mom and I were in the motels last summer in transition when we were moving our houses." And he said to me did you feed us? And I said, yeah. And he goes, oh my goodness, the food was so good. So I got like this direct
feedback,
criticism or, for my food. And I was like, wow, and I didn't have students at that time. It was me and my teaching assistant packing 400 meals a day, so it was pretty intense, but it was so great. So it really does have an impact with what they do, because they think about, and for what I do as a chef, it's like, are they going to take it? Are they going to heat it up? Are they going to put it on the engine of a car? Are they going to take it to their campsite and not be able to heat it up? Are they going to eat it in a motel room and maybe half heat it in a microwave? So it really adjusts the whole cooking process to keep the food safe. And so we really, bring things up to those proper temperatures of 165 and then really cool them down. And we make foods that we know will have longer shelf lives. I try to include protein and, but lots of vegetarian stuff for that reason too, like for less fat and things like that could go bad. But, they practice it constantly. They have to, especially with COVID in my workspace. We have to wear masks, stay out of the other workspace. There's other people in the building. We have to respect that. There's all kinds of things, but Vermont's doing pretty good with vaccinations now. So things are starting to relax a little bit with people's attitudes, but they're still practicing in my kitchen and in the food shelf and in Capstone, which creates a longer environment and a constant one. What they do when they leave is tough for me. My students have a lot of challenges, but I feel really good about the last 3 groups and how well they've done. So it's cool. Awesome. We package every day food with labels, how to reheat, how to not reheat. Hopefully it works. But once it goes out with food banks and food shelves, you guys, it's tough,
Yeah, I applaud you, Joy. I mean, what you're doing there, it's so, I mean, every teacher is rewarding, but you got that really special group.
I couldn't believe that I got that feedback from Keenan and his mom, like having to leave one apartment and going to another one and being in transition and being housed with homeless when you're not really homeless, but then coming to my class and that full circle thing was crazy. It's great how that happens. It's, resourcing food is a challenge too. So we get food that is maybe 1 or 2 days away from the use by date. So explaining that in a use by versus a good by, or is it actually bad, is a whole other thing. That's a food labeling thing that people don't really understand, is that a use by date, depending on what the food is, could be that food could last another 4 or 5 or 6 days. That takes a whole other, took me a lot of study and a lot of training to do that. The first, going from Necky gourmet chefing, right? And then teaching gourmet chefing, go to school with Elton Brown, and then going to a food shelf, which helped, the scientific education I had from Necky really helped me understand the length that food can live if you take care of it, so we'll get beets that have chew marks from raccoons, you guys. And are we going to use those from a local organic farm that's been cleaned or been gleaned, right? So I'll get 50 pounds of red beets. Out of those 50 pounds, 20 pounds of them might be half usable. So how do we clean them? How do we process them? How do we make sure that they're sanitary and good for, and we cook those, of course, we would never serve them raw, but you know what I mean? It's like those kind of things. It might sound crazy, but we also waste 180 billion tons of food a year in this country. It's ridiculous, that number. So how do we train our youth to understand and people to understand how to feed their families well nutritionally and utilize all of that product at the same time? There's a lot of factors to my job for sure, but it's challenging and it's awesome. And when you see the success rates, I had a student that was in prison from the age of 19 to 41, and he got out of CKA, great cook, went and worked for a Necky chef who ran a resort, and then gained the skills he needed to show up for work on time and be back in society, and the confidence and the strength, and just got himself a sales job, doing great in Williston, own apartment, doing his thing, and utilized all those programs that we pay for through state and taxes and whatever we do, and utilize them really well. So it's great to see those success stories,
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is such a great group. I love the diversity and the different levels. And you guys, and the best part is you guys are learning from each other.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're not in your own little cohorts because we're all teaching.
I got to ask you a question, Joe. Sorry, no problem. Joe, how do you manage 90 students in a half? I'm like, how do you teach them in a half-hour section?
Okay,
you know, I have 5 students in 6 hours.
So basically, I need to clarify that there's actually 4 instructors working at the same time. We have 2 instructional assistants, and we teach 2 blocks a day. So we have the student for 2.5 hours, 5 days a week, and they have a choice to come in the AM or in the PM.
I gotcha.
So that makes it like, oh yeah, now I get it. So in the context of KP or ServSafe, kind of getting back to that for a moment, having that chunk of time really gives us flexibility, because we could spend literally 45 minutes just on KP content or just on content that we're working on, and then we can still have time, another hour and 15 minutes to do a lab. And so a lot of times the labs that I do are more appropriate to an hour and a half, because I do like to have some time in the classroom.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. If
yeah,
you gave them time in the classroom. Yeah.
So a lot of times we can, I try to break it up into 2 to 3 different segments. If you try to go 2.5 hours all in one thing, you lose the kids, whether it be 2.5 hours of lecture or even 2.5 hours of a lab. They peter out. So you got to kind of keep it changing up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the attention span is the hard part, right, you guys? Because I remember teaching 20 years ago, and it was 10 minutes or 8 minutes or 6, and now it's 4 or 5, even for adults too. So or less, 50 seconds. Right. Thank you. You're the one that would be up to date most on that.
Right.
And I might be behind. I am old.
I don't know. I feel behind most of the time. It's like I'm
just like a TikTok.
Really? Is that true? 50 seconds? Really?
No, it's not. But
oh my God, it feels like that.
Sometimes. Look at TikTok. I mean, their videos are 30 seconds long.
Well, I mean, look at social media, right? It's 30 seconds or 144 characters. If you can't get it done in that, you almost lose it. So I find that my presentation, if I do a demo video, ironically, it's like, we used to look for videos that were about 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I can't go more than 2.5 minutes with a video if it's a demo video or anything. You lose the kids. You literally, even if it's something they're interested in, after about 2 to 3 minutes, and that's with me stopping it and explaining something or kind of re-engaging them, it's really a challenge.
Yeah, interesting. I have to throw a lot of, for my adults in lecture and things like that, I have to throw a lot of relevant examples in, like, what were you doing at home last night with your dishes and this and that, and to kind of keep it life oriented for them to connect it all.
Right.
How's the attention span of your place, Wayne?
Well, names. At middle school, names are the biggest thing. It took me years to learn this, but my roughest kids in the class, and for some reason they were the rough girls, right, that I would have a hard time with. If you just start saying their name, just say their name as many times as you can during a class period. That's all they want to hear, is you saying their name. So when we're developing questions, I didn't share the review, right? But we call them worthly questions, and the kids hate them because they're really hard, right? They're 10 times harder than the ServSafe questions.
Yeah.
But you use their names, Alfredo is having a party and he invited Susie and Jane and Alejandra. Use their names and create a scenario, right? And then so-and-so took the chicken out of the oven and put it on the table. When they see a question and they see their names, you got them. You can write a whole paragraph and they'll read it. So little tricks, you learn the little tricks that we all learn as we get more experience.
Yeah, teaching my person with Down syndrome was great, making soup. And they have their own special way of processing, meaning they'll start singing or they'll move around, and he was using a tilt skillet, you guys, for the first time, and with the hose, to fill up it with water and this and that. He started singing "Row, row, row your soup," and so I jumped right in and we sang "Row, row, row your soup." But it's true. I think those creative doesn't matter if you have Down syndrome or not, or if you're just, you know, okay, or a stellar student even, you might just, those creative ways of pulling them in, like you said, of creating stories or making it a fun activity. It doesn't matter what age group, it works. It works. It's interesting. Yeah.
Incredible. So how long do you have, Wayne, in your class period? That 2.5 hours must sounds like a luxury to you.
Well, it would depend on the student, obviously, right? But we're 88 minutes a period.
Okay, so you're not the 45 like most.
Yeah, 88 minutes. We're on a block. So because I have them in agri-science and food science, I've got them every day. So every day, 88 minutes.
Okay, that's not bad. So yeah.
No, you can really break up. You can get enough done in the food lab in 88 minutes if you're, you got to think about what you're doing, obviously. And if it's a big recipe, you just got to do it over 2 or 3 days.
Right. And do the step by step, like I was saying too, for preparation of food that's going out. You have to do like this long step by step process.
Yeah, because I can't lie to you guys. We know an 88-minute food lab, 40 of that minute is cleanup. We know that.
Yeah.
Well, you're preaching to the choir there. But I will say though, if you are doing a multiple day, which we will do too, even though I could do it in one day, but because of what we do, that still incorporates a lot of the ServSafe principles with regards to handling ready-to-eat foods, or cooling things down, or reheating things, or why are we assembling when we're assembling it the way we're assembling it, type thing. So.
Yeah, using of leftovers is a big thing for me too. So if we make a batch of fried chicken, for example, we might have 5 pieces left. What do we do with those 5 pieces to incorporate them in another dish, and not waste that food, but also make it safe for somebody to eat? So yeah, I feel like now that I've had this conversation, I'm really aware, like more extra aware of how often I'm actually using ServSafe practices in an everyday sentence, probably. I want to ask you guys as teachers though, do you use the ServSafe diagnostic tests at all? Like those, they have diagnostic tests that are paper form. Do you use those with your students too?
Yes, but I don't put a lot of weight on them anymore. I used to put more weight, but not so much, because they have seemed to not update the content that frequently.
Right. Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Joe, do you use them? No.
Not so much. Same as what Wayne was saying. And again, not to keep sounding like a broken record, but one of the advantages with KP is having the real-time updates and not worrying about a published date or an edition. And a lot of times we use Canvas as a learning management system. So we're using that in conjunction with, we'll use that with KP. And sometimes it's just easier for me to create a quiz that supports what they're doing anyway.
That's what I do. I create and customize my own quiz questions. Yeah, it's easier.
Yeah, and just to mention from my standpoint, we also have AI-driven analytics on the questions. So when Joe, you pull up the question, or Wayne, or any of you pull up the questions that they miss, you can tell the level of how bad it is. So it's like, are they really bad at it, or are they somewhat bad at it, or they did just make a mistake?
Right.
Yeah. So that analytics definitely helps out a lot with that. Aspect, at least the weight or the value of that question. Oh, so it looks like Joe, you're connecting again. Oh, cool.
Oh, he changed.
You changed to a new.
Yeah, I switched to Rue here. You can hear me okay?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No, so
move around. I'm hearing you.
No, this is a great discussion. I mean, lots of valuable stuff that I learned from each of you, because I think out of all of you, I've had the most extensive conversations with Wayne because of how unique his situation is. I know there's other middle schools to do it, but you've been doing it the longest that I know of, as far as like ServSafe and KP. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. We said, let's do this. A lot of people came together and we kind of designed a program. And then I'm not even sure, Nye, how I got involved with you. I really can't even remember.
It was Diane Collingwood who said, "Hey, we got this program. Nye's got it. Who wants to be a guinea pig?" And you raise your hand. And you're like, "I'll try it." You had no idea what we did specifically, But
she was actually supposed to, she just texted me, Diana Collingwood. I don't know if you can see Diana in my phone. Diana.
Yeah.
She's supposed to come here tonight, but she didn't leave the Virgin Islands.
Great. I mean, she retired from the district office, but she so she brought it to you because she knew what we did, and she said, well, if some of our teachers can actually use this, then we're gonna,
Well, I'll have to thank her next time I see her because I totally forgot how it happened. But I'm glad you shared that.
No, it was the first year we actually launched it. Because we didn't have ServSafe before that. We were just strictly culinary arts. And then I told her, hey, we got this new thing. It's supposed to make ServSafe easier. She's like, okay. Great. And then, so that's how you got into this, because before it didn't exist really. I mean,
right.
We didn't have it. You guys didn't have the program.
Nope.
So it was like basically we launched it at the same time in Miami. And you took to it really well. I mean, so I'm glad that it worked out for. Because honestly, when she first said middle school, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that really going to be successful?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have my doubts, honestly, because I know the material. I know how challenging it is.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Joe, at high school, they should have the cognitive level to be able to handle that. I mean, Joey, you have a different group, but they should be academically prepared for.
Some of my students have bachelor's degrees, you guys, in nutrition. They just fell off track for a little while, so it doesn't take long for them to come right back to it. For sure. So yeah,
I would love for you guys to advocate for hazard pay for us. It would be great.
Yeah, I'm hearing that. I know. But no, I like the KP a lot, and I thank you so much. I'm so glad we met each other at that food show years ago, or that school show. It was actually it was a college fair or something. It was great.
Yeah, something like that. I think it was cafe actually. It could be. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I don't remember exactly the specific event, but I remember finding your booth.
I think it was Niagara Falls. I'm guessing. No, maybe not.
I think it was Niagara. Yeah, I think you're right.
I remember that. Yeah. And you're like, this is
cool. Yeah, it was really cool. And I'm glad I had the opportunity to finally use it. I tried to, NECI taught its own curriculum, and I tried to get.
Well, everyone has their own ways, and it's hard to get change. I know that. So, all right. Well, if does anyone else have any other questions for each other? You guys are just a great group to have a conversation with.
Well, I could probably go on all night, but I know that.
Yeah, me too, guys. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you're heading home, right?
Likewise.
Well, I gotta go.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it was great meeting you,
Wayne.
And I'd like to, through Nye, if we can figure out a way to maybe connect, because there's a couple more things, maybe collaborate a little bit. It would be great.
Sure.
No, absolutely.
You all have each other's emails, so you can start talking behind my back now.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate it, Nye, bringing us together.
Yes.
Maybe.
And if you need anything like this again, just ask. We could do this. We could have open talk forums anytime. So I'm happy to spend an hour doing that anytime.
Yeah. Well, I know this was originally supposed to be only 20 minutes. So. But once we get a good powwow together, and you can tell this dynamic is pretty awesome. We could probably be chatting by our fireside with a good glass of wine for the next 2-3 hours if we were together.
I'm sure.
To the day when we can get together.
Stay safe with COVID, everybody.
Yes, you too. It was nice meeting and talking with all of you. I look forward to the next chance.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, y'all have a good night, and thank you so much for participating.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Nye. Thanks for KP.
Yeah. Thank you for being a user. Thank you. And I'd like to thank to those of you who stuck around and watched the entirety of this video. Like I said earlier, the original section, which was the panel, was only 20 minutes long, and the open discussion was planned for however long they wanted to talk, and we went on for an additional 40 minutes or so. So it was a fun time, and I hope you enjoyed your time here. This will be on YouTube, so check the description for links of things that they talked about and resources that we provided here, and be sure to like this video, and obviously if you like it, please subscribe. And thanks again for watching this 1 hour long discussion on ServSafe for managers and getting those kids from 8th grade on up to 45, 55 certified with this industry certification.